The air inside the bank felt colder than the December wind outside. It wasn't just the temperature. It was a hollow, sterile cold that seeped into your bones and settled in your stomach like a stone. I stood at the teller counter, clutching the withdrawal slip, my breath fogging slightly in the unnatural chill. This was it, the final piece. The bulk of it was already transferred, tucked away in the special account, growing its small interest like a diligent little worker bee. But this last bit, the emergency buffer, the few thousand I'd squirreled away over the years for unexpected fees or last-minute supplies, it was time for it to join the rest. Sarah's future, waiting like a ship ready to sail. My daughter, Sarah, 16 years old, with eyes that still held the wonder of a child, but a mind that was already reaching for the stars. She dreamed of astrophysics, of distant galaxies, and the secrets the universe held. A prestigious university on the coast was her target, a place where she could chase those dreams. And my dream was simpler, to give her the chance. Every extra hour at work, every skipped vacation, every worn-out pair of shoes instead of new ones, it all went into the fund. Her college fund. Our college fund. A joint account, built dollar by dollar, year by year, a silent promise whispered between my husband, Mark, and me. Our shared purpose, the anchor in the sometimes stormy seas of marriage and life.
Mark.
He was comfortable. Not ambitious, not particularly driven, but kind mostly. A steady presence. We'd built a life together, a quiet house on a tree-lined street, the rhythm of two incomes flowing into one shared stream, dammed up in parts for future use. The college fund was the biggest dam, the most sacred pool. We'd look at the statements sometimes, watching the number tick up, a quiet sense of accomplishment passing between us. Sarah would talk about dorm life, lecture halls, the hum of possibility, and we'd nod, smiling, already seeing her there. It wasn't just money. It was possibility, security, a launch pad built of sacrifice and love. The teller smiled, counted the bills. I signed the slip.
Done.
The fund was complete, ready. A wave of relief, warm and profound, washed over me, melting the bank's cold. I walked out into the bright winter day, the envelope secure in my purse, a lightness in my step. I called Sarah. "It's done," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "The fund. It's all there." There was a gasp, then a whoop of joy on the other end. "Mom. Oh my God, Mom. Really? Really? Every penny we need. Waiting for you." "I love you," she cried. "Thank you. Thank you, and Dad. You thank us by getting into that school." I laughed, tears pricking my eyes. "I will. I promise." That promise, the shared joy of that moment, felt like a foundation carved from granite. Unshakable. Invincible. If this story hits close to home in any way, or if you've ever poured your heart and soul into a dream like this, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It helps me more than you know to keep telling these stories. The first crack appeared subtly, a hairline fracture I didn't recognize at the time. Mark started working late. Not unusually late at first, just an hour or two. Then it stretched. He'd come home smelling faintly of expensive perfume, a scent I didn't wear. When I asked, he'd sigh, rub his temples, talk about new clients, stress, the need to impress. I bought it. Life gets busy. Work gets demanding. We were approaching empty nest. Maybe he was finding new purpose, new focus. I told myself I was being silly, overly sensitive. Then the phone calls started. Whispered conversations in the other room. Texts he shielded from view. His phone, once left carelessly on the counter, became a guarded secret, tucked into his pocket, screen down. The small, almost imperceptible shifts added up, creating a growing unease in the pit of my stomach. My granite foundation felt unstable. One evening, while he was in the shower, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. A notification I couldn't help but see, the name a brightly lit beacon in the dim room. Chloe, followed by a string of heart emojis and a message. "Can't wait to see you tonight, darling." Winking face.
Darling.
The word hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. My heart seized in my chest, a cold, hard fist squeezing the air from my lungs. Darling. Not honey, not sweetie, not any of the familiar, slightly worn endearments we used. Darling. Intimate.
New.
Exciting. I didn't confront him immediately. I couldn't. My mind reeled, cycling through denial, confusion, a desperate hope that it was a work colleague, a playful joke, anything but the obvious truth screaming in my gut. I watched him that night, saw the subtle tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes avoided mine for a fraction too long. He was a stranger wearing my husband's skin. The next day, I looked her up.
Chloe.
Easy enough to find in the age of social media. Her profile was public. A cascade of carefully curated photos, glamorous nights out, expensive dinners, weekends away, and Mark, sometimes clearly visible, sometimes a figure in the background, always looking happier, lighter than he had in years. She was younger, vibrant, the kind of woman who seemed to float through life on a cloud of effortless charm and expensive fabric. Her bio mentioned she was a creative entrepreneur, and then I saw it. Recent posts celebrating the upcoming launch of her dream project, a boutique. Chloe's Closet. The pieces clicked into place with sickening finality. The late nights, the perfume, the secretive calls. He wasn't working. He was building something with her. Investing himself, his time, his emotions, his money. The thought hit me like a physical blow. Not our money. Please, not our money. Not Sarah's money. I went to the bank the next day, my hands trembling as I asked for a full statement on the joint account. The teller's face was impassive as she printed it out. I took it to my car, parked in a quiet corner of the lot, and unfolded the crisp paper. My eyes scanned the familiar entries, deposits from our paychecks, small withdrawals for shared expenses. Then I saw them. A series of large transfers. Not explained, not labeled. Outgoing.
To a business account.
The dates matched the timeline of Mark's late nights, Chloe's online activity. The balance. My eyes blurred. It was gone. Not all of it, but the vast majority.
The core.
The foundation. The sacred pool.
Drained.
I sat there, the paper rustling in my shaking hands, the world outside the car window blurring into streaks of color. The air was thick, impossible to breathe. A silent scream built in my chest, clawing its way up my throat, but I couldn't release it. Not here. Not yet. The betrayal wasn't just about the affair. It was the desecration of our shared dream, the theft of our daughter's future, the cold, calculated violation of the most sacred trust we had. I drove home, the car feeling foreign, the familiar streets alien. Mark was there, watching television, the picture of domestic tranquility. I stood in the doorway, the bank statement a lead weight in my hand. Mark. My voice was a low, guttural sound I barely recognized. He turned, a casual smile on his face that faltered when he saw me. Hey, honey, you're home. I held up the statement. Where is it? His face went blank for a split second, then a flicker of something, panic? Defiance? Crossed his features. Where's what? The money. Sarah's college fund. Where is it, Mark? He sighed, standing up, running a hand through his hair.
Oh, that.
We need to talk. Yes, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. We need to talk. All of it. The transfers.
Chloe.
The boutique. He stiffened at the name. Chloe? What does she have to do with anything? A pathetic attempt at innocence. Don't. Just don't. I warned, the scream finally beginning to tear at my insides. It's gone. Most of it.
To a business account.
I saw her profile. Chloe's Closet. You used Sarah's money.
He exploded then.
Not with guilt, but with anger. Defensiveness. Used it? I invested it. It's an opportunity. This isn't just some hobby. This is a real business. Chloe is brilliant. This boutique is going to be huge. It's going to make more money. More than enough for college. More than we ever had. You stole it, I shouted, the silent scream finally breaking free, raw and ragged. You stole our daughter's future. For your mistress. She's not my mistress. She's a partner, he yelled back, taking a step towards me, his face red with rage. A business partner. We have something real. Something exciting. Not this comfortable little rut. He gestured around the living room, his contempt of physical force. And Sarah? I choked out, tears streaming down my face now, hot and stinging. What about Sarah's dream? Her school? You had no right. That money wasn't yours to gamble away. It's our money, he roared. Half of it is mine. And I decided to make it work for us. For all of us. Can't you see? This is a chance to get out of this. This mediocrity. You didn't decide. I screamed back, past tears now, into pure, blazing fury. You lied. You betrayed us. Both of us. You took the one thing that was supposed to be untouchable, and you gave it to her. To Chloe. To build her dream with my daughter's future. The fight escalated, words like knives, accusations like blows. He became cruel, defensive, painting me as boring, unsupportive, holding him back. He minimized the college fund, calling it a modest sum that would be easily replaced by the boutique's profits. He glorified Chloe, her vision, their connection. The man I thought I knew vanished, replaced by a self-justifying stranger consumed by a midlife infatuation and reckless ambition. I don't remember how the night ended. Maybe I locked myself in the bedroom. Maybe he left. The details blurred into a haze of pain and shock. The granite foundation hadn't just cracked, it had exploded into dust. The days that followed were a blur of silent agony. Mark stayed away most nights, wrapped up in his new life, his new partner, his new dream. Sarah felt the shift, the icy silence that filled the house, the strained conversations. She asked about college applications, deadlines, the financial aid forms. Each question was a twist of a knife. I couldn't bring myself to tell her. How could I shatter her world like that? How could I tell her her father had gambled away her future on his affair? I tried to talk to him again, calmer this time, appealing to the man I used to know. Mark, please. We need to fix this. We can take a loan, sell something, anything. But Sarah can't lose this. Her early decision application is next month. He was dismissive. Fix what? It's handled. The boutique is opening next week. The initial sales projections are phenomenal. We'll have the money. Stop panicking. Panicking. I echoed, my voice flat. You stole the money, Mark. You built her boutique with it. You expect me to trust projections? To trust you? His eyes hardened. If you weren't so negative, maybe you could be happy for me for once. This is happening. It's done. Just accept it. Accept it. Accept that my life savings, our daughter's future, was now tied up in Chloe's closet, a monument to his betrayal. Accept that he felt no remorse, only resentment that I wasn't celebrating his recklessness. Accept that the man I married was gone, replaced by someone selfish and cruel. I couldn't accept it. The pain began to morph into something else. A cold, hard anger. A resolve that settled deep in my bones, chilling me from the inside out. He thought he'd won. He thought he could just take what he wanted and face no consequences. He thought I was weak. He thought I would crumble. He was wrong. The midpoint shift. It wasn't a sudden flash of insight, but a slow, chilling transformation. I stopped crying. I stopped pleading. I stopped looking at him with hurt and started looking at him with calculation. I watched him, listened to his careless boasts about the boutique, about Chloe, about their vision. He was so open, so confident in his new venture, blind to the precariousness of foundations built on lies and stolen dreams. He and Chloe had taken Sarah's future, wrapped it in silk scarves and designer dresses, and put it on display. My initial impulse was to burn it down, to expose them, to cause a scene. But that wouldn't get the money back. That would just be messy, emotional, a spectacle. He wanted a spectacle, a justification for his actions. He wanted me to be the hysterical wife, so he could be the misunderstood visionary.
No.
That wasn't the way. The emotional approach had failed. Logic, cold, brutal logic, was needed now. He used finance to hurt me. I would use finance to destroy him. Not him personally, not yet. But his dream. Her dream. The monument they had built with stolen funds. I would hit them where it hurt the most, their perceived success, their glittering future. I started researching. Everything. Not just their social media, but business licenses, permits, tax records, corporate filings. Chloe's business history. Mark's financial history, beyond the joint account. The transfer itself, the specifics, the dates, the amounts, the receiving account details. It was tedious, painstaking work. Late nights alone at my laptop after Sarah was asleep, the glow of the screen illuminating the grim determination on my face. I learned about business structures, financing, regulatory bodies, the subtle differences between types of fraud. I read articles about failed businesses, about financial investigations, about legal precedents. It was like learning a new language, a cold, sterile language of numbers and laws, a stark contrast to the language of love and trust that had been my mother tongue. The boutique opened. Mark sent me an invitation to the grand opening, a passive-aggressive gesture, I assumed. A way to show off his triumph. I declined. I couldn't bear to see it, to see Sarah's future paraded around as luxury goods.
But I heard about it.
He came home late, flushed with excitement, talking about the crowds, the sales, the buzz. We nailed it, he crowed, oblivious to the icy silence that met his enthusiasm. Chloe's closet seemed to be a hit. This success, built on our ruin, twisted the knife deeper. It wasn't just the money anymore. It was the sheer audacity, the lack of conscience. It was the feeling of being utterly helpless, watching them thrive on my despair. The initial struggles had been emotional, the rising challenges had been financial and marital. Now, the deepening crisis was existential. What kind of world was this where people could just take? Where loyalty and sacrifice meant nothing? Where dreams could be casually plundered and repurposed for someone else's shiny new life? Sarah was starting to worry openly. Mom, have you sent the financial aid forms? They need the account details. And what about the supplemental scholarship application? It asks for proof of funds. My heart ached. I'd mumble something about paperwork, delays, needing Mark's signature. Each lie felt like swallowing glass. I was protecting her, but I was also complicit in the delay, the uncertainty. Time was running out. The application deadline felt like a physical weight pressing down on my chest. Hope felt like a distant, fading star. The money was gone. The boutique was open, successful. Mark was lost to me, consumed by his new life. I was alone, facing the impossible task of somehow conjuring tens of thousands of dollars out of thin air while protecting my daughter from the devastating truth. It felt like all was lost. Then the turning point. It wasn't a moment of despair, but of absolute stillness. One evening, I was staring at a spreadsheet filled with Chloe's reported business expenses, comparing them to industry averages. It was dry, mind-numbing work. And suddenly, a line item, combined with the detail I'd found about the type of account the college fund had been in, a specific educational savings plan with certain withdrawal rules and reporting requirements, something clicked. A legal regulation. A financial reporting threshold. A potential flag. Not for theft necessarily, which felt too personal, too hard to prove in a way that would immediately seize assets, but for irregular financial activity. Something that would trigger a system, an audit, an investigation. It wasn't about the affair. It wasn't about the broken marriage. It was about the numbers. Cold, hard numbers moving in ways they shouldn't have, crossing lines they weren't supposed to cross, specifically when pulled from a federally regulated educational account and transferred to a commercial business without proper justification or reporting. It was a technicality, a loophole I could exploit. The thought was electrifying, not in a joyful way, but in a surge of cold, focused power. This wasn't revenge. This was correction. This was using the system that was supposed to protect assets against those who had abused it.
It was complicated.
It was subtle. It required careful timing and execution. It required absolute focus, no room for emotion. I made a decision. I would see this through. I would use every resource, every bit of information I had painstakingly gathered, to trigger the necessary chain reaction. I wouldn't confront them. I wouldn't threaten. I would simply initiate the process and let the system do its work. This was no longer just about the money. It was about restoring order, about proving that actions have consequences, even when cloaked in lies and charm. I was no longer the grieving wife. I was the meticulous architect of a very particular kind of justice. The fear vanished, replaced by a quiet, unwavering determination. The plan was simple in concept, excruciating in execution. I identified the specific regulations regarding the type of educational savings account we had used and the reporting requirements for large, irregular transfers, especially into business accounts. I found the relevant government agencies responsible for overseeing these types of accounts and financial transactions. I compiled a detailed, fact-based report, cross-referencing the transfer details from the bank statement with Chloe's business registration information and online presence, highlighting the dates, the amounts, and the destination account. I focused purely on the financial irregularities, the potential non-compliance, the flags that should have been raised. I presented it as a concerned citizen report, raising questions about possible financial misconduct or misuse of funds that might violate regulations tied to the source account. No mention of affair, no emotional accusations. Just the data, presented clearly and concisely. I didn't file it under my name. I found a way to submit it anonymously or through a third party who handles such tips. I was careful, meticulous. This wasn't about getting credit. It was about triggering the mechanism. Once the report was filed, it was a waiting game. A tense, agonizing wait. Weeks passed. Sarah's college deadlines loomed. I lived a double life, outwardly managing the household, supporting Sarah's college application efforts with reassurances I barely believed myself, while inwardly tracking news, checking financial blogs, looking for any ripple on the surface of the financial world that might indicate my carefully dropped pebble had caused a splash. Mark and Chloe were riding high. Chloe's closet was featured in local magazines, buzzing on social media. Mark was insufferable, strutting around like a self-made millionaire, occasionally throwing condescending remarks my way about my lack of vision. He was planning a big event at the boutique, an anniversary celebration, a thank you to their investors and loyal customers, a public display of their success.
Perfect.
I heard about the party details through mutual acquaintances, through stray conversations Mark had on the phone. Saturday night, 7 o'clock. Full house expected. Chloe was planning to make a speech, toast their future. Mark would be there, beaming, the proud co-owner, the man who had risked it all and won. I decided I had to see it. Not the party itself, but the moment. The climax. I told Sarah I was going to a late movie. I drove downtown, found a parking spot across the street from Chloe's closet. The boutique windows glowed, warm and inviting, filled with mannequins draped in expensive clothes. Inside, I could see the blur of people, hear the faint murmur of music and laughter even through the glass. Balloons, flowers, a festive atmosphere. Mark was there, by Chloe's side, raising a glass, his face alight with triumph. He looked completely, utterly relaxed, basking in the glow of his ill-gotten gains. The air was crisp cold. I stayed in my car, the engine off, watching. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drum against the icy calm I had built around myself. This was it. The culmination of months of pain, research, and silent, calculated effort. 7:30. The party was in full swing. Chloe was at the front of the room, holding a microphone, her smile wide, glittering under the boutique's lights. She was thanking people, talking about dreams coming true, about hard work paying off. Mark stood beside her, his arm around her waist, his eyes fixed on her, adoration plain on his face. They were in their element, untouchable, celebrating their future built on the ruins of mine and Sarah's. And then, the sirens were faint at first, distant wails that grew steadily louder, closer. Heads turned inside the boutique. A ripple of confusion. The music faltered. Chloe stopped speaking, a puzzled look on her face. Two dark sedans, unmarked but official-looking, pulled up to the curb directly in front of the boutique. Behind them, a larger vehicle. People in dark jackets, badges clipped to their belts, emerged from the cars with swift, purposeful movements. Federal agents. A collective gasp inside the boutique, audible even through the glass. The music cut off completely. The laughter died. Silence fell over the festive room, heavy and sudden. The agents moved towards the entrance. One of them held up a document, showing it to a startled employee who stood frozen by the door. Then they were inside. Chaos erupted. People started murmuring, backing away. The agents fanned out, their faces grim, professional. They weren't interested in the customers. They went directly to the front of the room. Towards Chloe. Towards Mark. Chloe's triumphant smile dissolved into confusion, then fear. Mark's face, moments ago flushed with pride, went white. His eyes widened in disbelief. He started to say something, waving his hands, looking indignant. An agent showed him a badge, then another document. I watched from my car, my breath held tight in my chest. It was happening. It was really happening. The agent spoke to Mark, calm, authoritative. Mark's face crumpled. Indignation turned to shock, then pure, unadulterated panic. He looked around wildly, as if searching for an escape, for an explanation. His eyes landed on Chloe, who looked equally stunned and terrified. Then it happened. The moment I had waited for, planned for, endured hell for. Mark's head snapped back, his mouth opening in a soundless scream I could feel in my bones even from across the street. A primal cry of a man whose world had just collapsed, whose carefully constructed reality had just been ripped apart by forces he never saw coming. The scream was swallowed by the sudden surge of noise and panic inside the boutique as agents began instructing people to leave. He reached out, grabbing the arm of the nearest agent, babbling, protesting. The agent calmly but firmly removed his hand. Mark stumbled back, colliding with a display rack, sending clothes tumbling to the floor. His eyes were wide, disbelieving, darting between the agents, the document in their hands, and the collapsing scene around him. Chloe was being spoken to by another agent, her face pale, her body trembling. This wasn't karma. This wasn't fate. This was a carefully orchestrated consequence, triggered by his own actions, by the specific, illegal way he had moved the money from Sarah's college fund. The federal agents weren't there because he had an affair. They were there because he committed financial misconduct tied to a regulated account, an irregularity I had pointed out to the right people in the right way. He thought he was untouchable, too smart for consequences. He thought he could just take the money, build his new life, and leave me in the dust. He never once considered that the very act of stealing from a specific type of savings account and transferring it to a business might trigger alarms far beyond a wife's broken heart. He was completely blindsided. He thought he was winning right up until the moment the door burst open and his triumph turned into a federal investigation. His scream was the sound of that realization hitting him like a physical blow. I stayed there for a while longer, watching the scene unfold. The boutique was being emptied, customers ushered out, faces a mixture of curiosity and shock. Agents were placing official-looking seals on the door, bringing out boxes. The glittering facade of Chloe's closet was being systematically dismantled, reduced to evidence in a case built on financial malfeasance. I didn't feel triumph, not pure, exhilarating triumph anyway. There was a deep, bone-weary satisfaction. A sense of balance restored, of a debt being paid, not to me, but to the principle of consequence. Mark's scream echoed in my mind, the sound of his world imploding. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the arrogance, the betrayal, the callous disregard for the future he had promised to protect. I drove home in silence, the city lights blurring outside my window. The house was dark, quiet. Sarah was asleep. I stood in the hallway, the silence of the house a stark contrast to the controlled chaos I had just witnessed. It was over. The battle for the money, for Sarah's future, for some semblance of justice. The fallout was messy, as expected. The boutique was seized, its assets frozen as part of the investigation into financial irregularities and potential fraud related to the source of its funding. Mark was questioned, his name linked to the inquiry as an investor and partner. The affair came out publicly, splashed across local news alongside the story of the boutique's sudden closure and the federal investigation. His reputation, his career, his marriage, all in ruins. Chloe was also under scrutiny. Sarah eventually learned the truth, gently, carefully explained. The initial shock, the hurt, the confusion about her father's actions were immense. But the relief that her college fund, or at least the possibility of replacing it through legal means tied to the seized assets, was secure, was also palpable. She was angry at her father, deeply disappointed, but resilient. She focused on her applications, her studies, her own path forward. The divorce was swift, clinical. Mark was a broken man, stripped of his arrogance, facing legal battles and financial ruin. The money from the seized assets, after legal processes, was indeed used to replenish Sarah's college fund. It was a long, complicated process, involving lawyers and court orders, but the money was recovered, secured, untainted by its brief detour into Chloe's closet. My life is quieter now. The house feels different, emptier, but also lighter. The toxic presence, the lies, the betrayal, they are gone. The future stretches ahead, uncertain, but mine to shape. Sarah is thriving, accepted into her dream school, her launch pad restored, her future secured. I learned that sometimes the most powerful response to betrayal isn't emotional confrontation, but cold, calculated action. That paper trails can be more powerful than angry words. That systems, when understood and correctly navigated, can deliver a justice that feels more profound than simple revenge. There's no triumphant ending credits rolling in real life. Just the quiet process of rebuilding, repairing the damage, healing the wounds, finding a new path. It was a high price to pay for a lesson learned, but Sarah's future is bright, and that, in the end, was the only victory that truly mattered. The scream is just a memory now, a haunting reminder of the cost of lies and the unexpected strength found in silence and strategy. If this story resonated with you, if you've faced your own impossible moments and found a way through, I'd love to hear your version. Drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. Thanks for being here. Subscribing helps bring more of these to life.